I think people will be keep joining, so we can start.
Sure.
Uh, so welcome everyone for the today's talk. The last month we were celebrating Wildlife Week, and we did also have a beautiful event, Arts Meet Nature. And if we get time, we will show the entries in the later part of the talk. So in today's talk, our guest is Mr. Rohan, and many of you might already know him if you use Instagram or Facebook. He used to post regularly on Green Humour page, which is really a beautiful page, and you can check it after the talk if you haven't checked. So Mr. Rohan is a cartoonist and illustrator, and draw and write about different species and show his love through making comics and arts and illustrations. He also sometimes explains the big science jargons with simple illustrations and artwork, which is very important in today's time. And today he would be presenting us through his work and life, and also through his beautiful books, which you can buy from Amazon. Also, the books are as a prize for the event we kept. Uh, he will be also introducing us how the arts and crafts are important in today's time, and also how it is important in science communication these days. I would request Sir to present and start.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav, for the introduction. And it's a real honor to be here. In fact, one of my first interactions with scientists happened because of IISER in Mohali. And it's again great to be back in another edition of IISER. I hope someday I am presented with the opportunity to actually visit your campus and your premises and
Yes, sir.
interact with you all.
We would
Until then,
also be honored if you will visit our campus.
thank you. Until then, it's got to be virtual. I know all of you are as sick of virtual events as I am, but please bear with me as I present the proceedings for the day. I was told, and it's a real honor for me that you have selected both of my books as prizes for an art contest, and thank you for making me such a big part of this event. So what I am presenting today is actually just a walkthrough two of my books, Green Humour for a Green Planet and Naturalist Ruddy, both of which have released this year. And in the process of walking you through both these publications, I will also be talking about how cartoons are an important tool in conservation communication and awareness of ecology, wildlife, and such issues. So, to begin with, let me take you through my first book, Green Humour for a Green Planet. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
So I'm a cartoonist, and my series is called Green Humour. It is a weekly series that appears in two newspapers from India, Sunday Midday and Sunday Hindu. And I also publish with a few online columns such as Round Glass. I'm represented by Go Comics. And I've also collaborated with various kinds of organizations and even state forest departments that work on wildlife conservation. And why I do what I do is this. My slideshow is going to have a lot of cartoons, which I will just leave you to read, and then I will speak about them. So wild animals cannot stage wardrobe malfunctions and make headlines like celebrities do, like politicians do, and they do not have a voice, which is why creative communicators like us have a task in our hands to give them a voice and to make their plight heard among the general masses. So every time I'm presenting this talk, I begin with a game where I ask the audience to identify three sets of entities that I'm presenting. So the first one is here. I'm sure all of you know who these people are. This movie has recently released and it's creating waves across the internet. It's a Rohit Shetty action film. And every Indian will know the people on the screen: Ajay Devgan, Akshay Kumar, Katrina Kaif, and Ranveer Singh. If I ask you to identify these two people, I'm sure you'll be able to tell me, despite the fact that their faces are covered with the COVID masks. That's the President of the United States and the Vice President. But if I tell you to identify this creature for me, I'm sure some of you will tell me it's a dragonfly. But if I ask you to tell me the exact species, you may not be able to. There may be some of you who are insect aficionados and might know what this is, but most of you will not know. And this is my major complaint with the way science is communicated in this country. And a lot of the things that revolve around our own lives directly, and the things that our lives revolve around directly are not made to be realized by the masses. And this is one of the few things. This dragonfly is the globe skimmer. It is the longest migrating insect in the world. And I think if you look out of your window anywhere in India at this around this time of the year, you may be able to spot a few. And why is that? Because these dragonflies undertake the longest migration in the world for an insect, all the way from the northern latitudes around Russia and Japan to India, which is about 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers. And they come here to breed, and before that, they prey massively on mosquitoes. So this creature, the globe skimmer, is saving us directly from disease. Akshay Kumar is not doing it. Joe Biden is not doing it. Katrina Kaif is not doing it. But the dragonfly is, and yet we do not know much about this insect. So here's a cartoon about the globe skimmer from my book, which, as Gaurav said, is available on Amazon and in bookstores. Imagine a scenario where it's the 1600s in Mauritius, and the first Europeans are coming to Mauritius to settle down, and the dodos are still around. So, do you think if good science communication existed at that point, the dodo would still be alive? I think so. I think that is quite a stark possibility. It's because people were not talking about why the dodo is important to people, what its role is in the ecology of Mauritius. People were quick to wipe the dodo out. These are just four of the many creatures that have gone extinct in my lifetime. I was born in 1987. The golden toad disappeared from the planet in 89. The gastric brooding frog, which is a very special frog, it reared its own young in its stomach. That went out in 1990. Sorry, the year is printed wrong. The Pinta Island tortoise, one of the largest terrestrial reptiles in the world, went extinct in 2012. And the bramble K. melomis was the first mammal to go extinct because of climate change in 2016. And the sad part is that I didn't even know that the bramble K. melomis exists before it made the news by going extinct. And that is the plight of science communication today. And somewhere I feel that even though a lot of scientists are doing great work, they are making new discoveries every day. They are making they are bridging the gap in our understanding of science every day. Not enough is being done in communicating those discoveries and in communicating that science to the public. So again, I want to play a game with you. I want to ask you to imagine a scenario where you are in a party, all right? And on one hand, there is this friend of yours who's just had a breakup, okay, and he's drinking himself to death. And you know that if you spend the rest of the evening with him, he's going to tell you sob stories about his ex. And on the other hand, you have a comedian or a performer or a singer who's enthralling the crowd with her performance or her songs. Who would you like to spend the rest of your evening with? I hope it is the person on the right? So that is a kind of comparison I'm making between science articles and cartoons. Science articles tend to be a lot, full of gloom and doom and a lot of jargon, whereas visually equipped communication has the power to affect a viewer much quicker. I recently had the privilege of presenting cartoons at the ongoing COP26 in Glasgow, and I was a part of a few sessions that I had to listen to, and to my utter surprise or shock or whatever you call it, the word biodiversity in such an important conference of a global scale was mentioned only once in 3 hours. So if ecologists are making new discoveries every day, where is the communication? If world leaders at COP26 uttered the word biodiversity only once in 3 hours, clearly we know that not enough is being done in terms of communication. So there are three ways in which I believe cartoons work. There are many other ways of creative communication of science. There could be animation, there could be film, there could be documentaries. I deal with cartoons, so I'm going to tell you about cartoons. They deliver a message of conservation without preaching. They simplify jargon for the layman and instill a love, respect, and curiosity for nature in the reader. So, if you think of science communication as a pizza, the oregano and the chili flakes could be cartoons. Quickly going to illustrate these 3 points to you and tell you how exactly cartoons function in the communication of conservation. This is a case of this is a cartoon about palm oil, and as you know, palm oil is in a lot of commercial products that we consume day in and day out. And palm oil is wiping out the habitat of many creatures that live in rainforests, especially in Southeast Asia. One of which happens to be the orangutan. So this is a cartoon that gives you the issue, the problem, and a gag all in one visual. And it is a message that you can retain and I hope will be encouraged to respond to in whichever small way you wish to. How do cartoons simplify scientific jargon? Let me give you an example. If I tell you that the mammary gland of the elephant is located in the pectoroaxillary region, which is the same space where the human mammary gland is located, by the way, you may or may not retain this information. You may or may not remember it after this slideshow. But if I show you this cartoon, I can guarantee you there is absolutely no way you're forgetting what I just told you. How do cartoons instill respect for nature? This is a comic on the pygmy marmoset, which is the world's smallest monkey, and it is threatened by the pet trade. It's found in the Amazon basin. And after I published this comic in an American platform called Go Comics, somebody from Peru wrote to me saying that he was considering buying this monkey as a pet, but refrained from doing so after reading this comic. So here's one case where my work has actually managed to save the life of at least one wild animal, and it is many more such tangible impacts that I aspire to in future. Now I'm just going to leave you to read some of my cartoons from the book Green Humour for a Green Planet before I move on to Naturalist Ruddy. This book is a collection of about 230 of my cartoons, and they've been published across several kinds of media in the last 8 years, and this is a compilation of all my published work. It not just deals with themes of sustainability or climate change, but also biodiversity loss and why exactly biodiversity loss is happening across genera, across different kinds of species. And the focus also shifts not just on megafauna, but also shifts to lesser known fauna that we tend to speak less about, like frogs. I hope you're all reading what is being displayed on the screen. This is a cartoon about plastic pollution of marine environments. I've been an avid bird watcher for a long time, and a lot of my work deals with birds. I tend to be a little partial to birds because they are some of my favorite subjects. And like I said, not just birds and glamorous creatures, but also insects. Insects like the dung beetle, which actually make the planet roll. Different kinds of these cartoons are compiled in different chapters of the book. Some are on sustainability, some are on marine biology, some deal with mammals, some deal with birds, and speak purely about ecology and wildlife science, while some chapters speak about conservation and the politics of conservation. So those of you who are not politically active or prefer to take political sides with a lot of fervor might find some of the cartoons in the book slightly objectionable because they do not mince words in satirizing the truth about how environmental governance is carried out in India. You may have seen this comic, or at least this snippet from my comic about the draft EIA notification that came out last year and is still a very controversial document. What happened was that several contentious environmental laws were being passed and diluted to suit industries and businesses. And something that was visual needed to assist this kind of communication so that people responded to this notification. And because people could not go out and protest, a lot of the protests were happening online. So my cartoon on the draft AI notification became sort of a visual face for the entire movement, and went a long way in familiarizing people with the nitty gritties of this notification, at least in a simple way. There is a chapter in the book that has COVID related cartoons and how COVID is related to environmental mayhem and destruction, and what its impacts are on epidemiology and even the future of wildlife conservation. This book is available on Amazon and in bookstores, and it has fortunately been an Amazon bestseller for 2 months since its release. These are some of my publishers who currently run my column: Go Comics, Sunday Midday. I'm sure a lot of you read The Hindu. Round Glass is an online and a very popular wildlife magazine. And I'm also represented by Cartoon Collections and Cartoon Stock, which are cartoon licensing companies based in the US and the UK. A lot of my work is on the web. My website is called greenhumour.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I also have a web store that prints and ships my products across the world. Coming to Naturalist Ruddy, I don't know how many of you have read this book, but it's my most recent publication, and it's about making ecology and making the discovery of creatures around us fun for a lay reader. And its protagonist is a detective who happens to be a mongoose. I'm going to tell you more about Ruddy, who Ruddy is, and what he does in the course of this presentation. So, who is Naturalist Ruddy? Ruddy is a mongoose, a ruddy mongoose. In fact, it's a species of mongoose found in central Indian forests and even in Sri Lanka. And Naturalist Ruddy is always ready for adventure. What kinds of adventure does he go through? I'll come to that. But where does Ruddy live? He lives in Kanha Tiger Reserve. I don't know how many of you have visited the place, but to me, Kanha is the mother of all Indian forests, because it has the quintessential Indian element across its landscape. It has tigers. It is home to the hard ground Barasinga, and a lot of people are not really familiar with the smaller and lesser known animals like the ruddy mongoose that also inhabit this landscape. Kanha is also home to the Bega and the Pardhi tribes, mostly the Begas, who have a lifestyle that is very interconnected with conservation and the environment. Here's the animal I was talking about, the ruddy mongoose that Naturalist Ruddy has been modeled on, and this is a picture from Kanha itself. This is a creature that is extremely keen and extremely stealthy. So it makes, in my opinion, it makes for a very good detective character. Naturalist Ruddy, being a detective, has certain tools that he uses for his investigations. One of which is a pair of binoculars, a notebook, a camera, and sometimes Naturalist Ruddy also depends on gadgets like laptops and memory cards to solve his cases. And he has a very bad habit of stealing camera traps. He steals camera traps that have been installed by organizations like the WCT, Wildlife Conservation Trust, or institutes like the WII, the Wildlife Institute of India. And of course, his detective hat. And Ruddy also relies on collaboration to solve a lot of his cases. So some of the recurring characters in this book are his trusted hat, Hatson, a molecular biologist called Dr. Shama, who's a white-rumped Shama. This is a species of songbird that is also found in Kanha. And Detective Herschel Pierrot, who's a red Pierrot butterfly. It's a hat tip to Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, who's a legendary fictional detective. So I'm going to do something very interactive and really fun with you guys. I'm going to ask you to solve a nature crime scene with Naturalist Ruddy. Some of you may have already read the book, so those of you who have already read the book, please do not answer the question that I'm going to ask you to answer. This is only for people who have not read Naturalist Ruddy yet. So here is a crime scene. Naturalist Ruddy has found the bones of a sambar deer. The sambar deer is the largest deer in India. Okay, and because the remains of this deer have been found just outside the cave, Ruddy assumes that the killer is resting inside the cave. Why else would such a large deer be carried to the mouth of the cave? So the logical reasoning here is that the murderer is inside the cave. But the mouth of the cave is only 2 feet in diameter. The sambar is a massive animal. So, which animal that is found in India could have killed India's largest deer and is less than 2 feet in size? That is my question for you. I'll give you 5 minutes to think, and you can type in your answers in the chat window. And Gaurav will read out these answers to me. Shall we begin? Sorry. Okay. I am on the chat window myself now, and I can see some answers. Python, snake. Python is a very good guess. Yeah. Snake. One of the smaller cats, Prutha. Like which one? India has 15 species of wildcats, the largest number of wildcat species for any country in the world, by the way. And interestingly, India also has the smallest wildcat in the world, which is the rusty spotted cat, and the largest wildcat in the world, which is the tiger. See, python may seem correct, but if a python swallowed a sambar, the bones would not come out intact. So it cannot be a snake. But I admit python is a very good guess. A group of dholes, but they could not rest inside a cave, right? Because they are larger than 2 feet in size. A badger is a very ferocious animal, but it is not really capable of killing something as big as a sambar, and it really does not need to kill a sambar. That's okay, Prutha. I think you made a fine guess, and yeah, it could certainly be a possibility, but I don't know of a small cat. So in Kanha, or in a central Indian landscape where the sambar is found, a small cat like a jungle cat or even say a leopard cat is not really capable of killing an adult sambar. But your guess is reasonable. Seems like a scavenger. Very good guess, Ritu. Wild dogs, no. Hyena again could not be resting in that cave because it is much more than 2 feet in size. Monitor lizard will not kill an adult deer, not at least the Indian species of monitor lizards. The water monitor, which is found in some of our coastal areas and even in adjoining islands, is capable of killing deer, but it will not rest in a cave like that. Wild dog, no. I've already answered that question. Anybody else? Any other guesses? Nobody has quite come to the point yet. Crocodile. Well, again, so the way a crocodile eats is not by discarding the bones. It swallows its prey whole, and it usually hunts in the water. So no. Homo sapiens. No. Nobody has any business resting in this cave. Killed by a tiger. Okay, Mona Lisa. Fabulous. You are very close to the answer. Now we are talking. Now the inner detective in you guys has been awoken. Now we are talking. So whoever is resting inside the cave has dragged the deer to its mouth, all right? Or at least the remains of the deer. So ants or rats cannot. Okay, fox is a very good guess. Porcupine. Okay, Ritu. Ritu got it right. I'm going to now present the rest of the story to you, all right? And we're going to see how exactly and why exactly the porcupine is the culprit, all right? Okay, was I? Sorry. Are you able to see my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So just this is how the story progresses, and I just like you to read the captions that go along with the visuals. Or maybe I'll read them to you so that we are on the same flow. So Ruddy takes cover behind a boulder and keeps his eyes glued to the cave's entrance. The culprit is certainly A crepuscular creature. Crepuscular means that it is active around dusk and dawn and not the rest of the day. The culprit is certainly a crepuscular creature to have disappeared in the cover of the cave's darkness during the day, Ruddy assesses. At dusk, a snout emerges. Ruddy can barely contain his curiosity. The deer hunter is seconds away from disclosing its identity. Holy snakes. Ruddy has a habit of uttering his own interjections whenever he is startled. Holy snakes, he says, an Indian crested porcupine. Ruddy was right to guess that the cave's occupant was a crepuscular animal, but completely wrong to assume that it had killed the stag. Why? Because the porcupine is herbivorous. It has a habit of picking bones and antlers from carcasses to later gnaw on them and supplement its diet with calcium. Care for some crunchy antlers offers the porcupine, but being a carnivore and not really requiring calcium supplements, Ruddy declines the generous offer politely, but not before mumbling some choice words at the prickly rodent for ruining his noon nap. So that was a story from Naturalist Ruddy that tells you a little bit about how the porcupine functions in its natural environment and interacts with the resources available to it through a suspense, a story that has an element of mystery to it. And in this process of exploration, I hope that readers like you and me will end up learning and interacting a lot more with India's wildlife. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this ride. And I hope that you enjoyed the talk and that you enjoy both these books. If you have any questions about my work or about the publications, I'll take them now. And thanks a lot for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. So one of my friend is asking that can't ants take the flash away?
Sorry, I'm just going to.
Sir, it's Gaurav.
Okay, have I ended the sharing of my screen? I'm not sure.
Yes, sir, I guess.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry, what was your question?
So one of my friend is asking that the can't ants and rats even eat away the flesh? And it seems little bit logical. Like if a tiger attacks, then
Yeah,
even the ants and the smaller, even crows can take away the flesh.
absolutely, absolutely. There are so
And
many other scavengers. But the fact that all its remains were at the mouth of this cave,
yeah,
somebody, the onlooker would imagine that the killer or the culprit is resting in that cave, right? A tiger can kill it anywhere, absolutely anywhere, and the carcass, whatever scavenger is killing it, is likely to remain intact. But the mystery was how something that is less than 2 feet in size has carried such a big animal to the mouth of this cave.
okay, thank you. If
Great.
anyone else,
Hi,
Sorry, yeah.
hi, Rohan. Hi.
Hi, Saurav.
Yeah, it was a really great talk, and we're really happy that Mr. Club could host you as, speaker here.
Thank you.
So we are a lot of people who are involved in wildlife conservation and wildlife photography. So can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are. Please go on.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, we're a really huge fan of you. Actually, we regularly follow your Green Humour
It's
and
a
all.
real honor. Thank you.
So,
Thank
yeah, yeah. So that's a really good opportunity for us to host you. So one of my question I would try to, move from you that how have you started your journey? I mean, as I whatever I know that you are a bat researcher, right? If I'm not very wrong.
you. No, no, no. My
Oh no, no, sir.
people get confused between me and my brother. My brother is a bat
Oh
researcher. His
yes,
name
yes.
is Rohit.
Oh yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's the okay, fine. So that's my apologies for that. So
Okay.
I will try to understand like how you have started as an illustrator and as a career, and when you
Yeah.
thought like look fine, let's give it a try. So how that started?
It's been a long journey. I actually graduated in dentistry, and I realized that it wasn't really for me. And that was when I wanted to become a cartoonist because I was always interested in cartooning, but it wasn't really going anywhere. So it was only after I picked up an interest in wildlife and started drawing cartoons about wildlife that I started to find my feet as an artist. But again, it wasn't something that I could make a living out of. So my next career was in animation. I worked in the animation industry for 4 years, first as a designer, then as a director, and that helped me hone my skills as a cartoonist as well because the principles of animation are somewhat similar to cartooning. And after a 4 year stint in animation, I gave it all up, and by then I had amassed a few publishers, and Green Humor was slowly turning into a self-sufficient model, and that's when I I think in 2014 I made the plunge into full-time cartooning, and since then I have been doing this full-time.
Okay, okay, that's good. That's good. I think we will just take some of the questions from chat box.
Sure, sure.
Uh, okay.
I'll
Yeah.
just go through some of your questions on the chat box.
Yes. Yes.
Monish is asking me, shouldn't Ruddy be a gruesome detective? He is a mongoose. What kind of compact has he made with other animals? Monish, the answer to your question is in the book. That's all I can say, because it is a book about mystery and suspense. So I'm not going to spill it out here. When you read the book, you will know how gruesome exactly Ruddy himself is. Pralhad Narsimhan is asking me, how do you walk the line between scientifically accurate and aesthetically pleasing? That's a very good question, Pralhad. Uh, so I think as a cartoonist, you tend to take a lot of liberties in terms of humor and in terms of anthropomorphizing what you're presenting, which is the attribution of human qualities to something that is not human, and that's something I depend on very heavily, so that my readers identify with my characters and feel for them. That's a liberty that cartoonists tend to take, and in the process, you may imagine that science does take a backseat, but it's actually the communication of science that is being made more impactful and more entertaining through this process. So it's a way of looking at cartoons, and even though a lot of my depictions are not scientifically accurate, I make sure that the information I'm presenting is, to the best of my capacity, verified and created in conjunction with scientists whenever possible. So, Naturalist Ruddy, for example, has been created with the help of a lot of scientists, and a lot of these stories that went into the book are the actual processes of how a certain species was discovered, or a certain interaction of the animal was discovered by science. Um, Sorry, are there any other questions? You can actually just unmute yourself and speak to me here if that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely can. So yeah, unless we have another question. So one more thing is like that. So that you have right now you are you have took this illustration like this cartoon and illustration as your career, right?
Sort
So
of, but
there
can I
are
request
a
you to
lot of
be a little louder? I can't hear you
yeah.
very well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is
yes, I can.
that clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So, what my question is to you, like, there are a lot of talented, say, like artists, and also in the field of science, and so that how, what would be your suggestion to them actually to pursue cartoonist or wildlife illustration as their career, and what will be your, I mean, suggestions to them?
See, it comes with the responsibility of making yourself a better naturalist, not just a better artist, and that is something that I enjoy doing. I may not be an expert on in wildlife, but I really enjoy exploring, and it's also a process for me to document what I'm learning by drawing cartoons. So it has to be an immersive process, and it has to be something you enjoy doing. Only then can you really combine it into something substantial. And different kinds of artists may enjoy drawing about different things, some social issues, some political issues. I happen to identify or relate more with wildlife, and also the environmental or the political aspects of managing wildlife and natural resources. So that's my realm, and I think the more the better you yeah my simple answer is that the better naturalist you are, the better wildlife artist you will be, in my experience.
That's great. So, yeah, I think we have another question on the
Sumit is
chat
asking
box.
me, in many European countries, we see youth movements such as Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future. What is the reason we don't see youth movements? Well, actually, Sumit, there is Fridays for Future in various cities, and they are very active here, and they actively do a lot of events. But unfortunately, you might have heard of environmental activists getting in a lot of trouble with the government. So it is also, I think, related with the way the government cracks down on young activists and protesters, that a lot of young people are reluctant to raise their voices. The youth as the generation posed to inherit the planet need to take it in their hands. Yes, I agree, and I think that is happening on a very big scale, especially with the internet facilitating a flow of information. And I'm sure in the years to come it will get better. Thank you, Sumit.
Um,
Yeah.
Hi, Rohan. This is Srihari.
Hi,
Um,
Srihari.
I really like your comics and really
Thank you.
enjoy work. So my question is, um, we as students or like young people, now you are someone who has a very big platform and you are able to communicate to us all these issues about environment and biodiversity degradation.
Yeah.
As an individual, as a student, I often feel very powerless. Like I'm able to read all this, like I am able to read all the things that are going on. But as an individual, I often feel very powerless in order to do anything about these things. I know I can vote and I can protest and I can organize, and we have been doing that, but still it feels very powerless because even after doing all of this, it seems like this giant machine that is raging on doesn't seem to be, like, it just keeps going on, right? So in that scenario, how, like, would you I mean, advise or maybe give something to, like, to keep still, like, to keep going? I know if we give up, the price is too much.
Yeah.
But in such hopeless situation where, like, the giant machine just doesn't seem to care,
Right.
it just doesn't seem to listen to what we are saying, like, how do we go on? How
I
do we?
often feel as hopeless as you do, Sherry, to be honest, and it's a question I grapple with myself every day. But I keep telling myself that a lot of countries have it much worse than us. You look
That's
at a
right.
few Middle Eastern countries, you look at Afghanistan, you look at
Yeah, that's right.
so so. I mean, look at the United States when
Yeah.
Donald Trump was their president for
Yeah.
4 years. So it can get a lot worse, and it's up to us to stop that from happening. So the best we can do is keep up the fight, and we are all doing it in our own small way, and it all hopefully adds up to something greater. So that's all I can say. Beyond that, it's too
I
philosophical a
understand.
question for me to answer.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Thank you.
Shireen has asked me, did I ever get into trouble? Yes, Shireen, a couple of times there have been inquiries with my editors about my whereabouts by right-wing groups, which I cannot name. But yes, it is a part and parcel of every cartoonist who deals with any kind of politics today. Uh, yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, also, just another question I would like to ask is, as you mentioned that there's a lot of intersect between politics and if you want to, like, also care about environment, but there is an intersect with political aspect of it as well.
Absolutely.
And which is, I also think that at some point you have to come into play with the politics of it as well. Now, how exactly? So, for example, you mentioned about the bill, right? The bill that
Yeah.
was being passed and the environmental protection laws that are being weakened for the industries.
Yeah.
How exactly do you think we can get the people around us, sometimes who are supportive of the government? It's very hard, I get it. But for these specific laws, right? For these very specific laws, how do you think we can get, at least for these specific laws, them to mobilize and maybe ask their government? So, right? I mean, at least
Yeah.
if they are the supporters, they might have a better impact on the government as well. So,
See,
how do you?
frankly, environmental when it comes to environmental issues, it doesn't really boil down to who's supporting which kind of government. It's about who is understanding the nuances of
Yeah,
communication, and that is something where we fail, where the media fails. The whole race for TRPs
right,
ensures that only the eye-catching bits of the news are being presented rather than the truth, and
right,
that becomes the responsibility of people who take it upon themselves to simplify these nuances and present it to a larger audience. So that's what I've been trying. A lot of other people have responded in many other ways. There have been so many nice explainer videos on the draft EIA,
hmm,
simplifying each and every point. In fact, it was two environmental lawyers, who reached out to me in the first place, saying that this is the issue and this really needs to be communicated, and
okay,
that's what prompted me in the first place to create that comic. And there have been several other so many efforts, and it all added up into a massive online movement, which actually pushed the government on the back foot. And this has never
okay,
happened in the history of Indian political protests, because it was the first time something of this scale was happening online, and it was about the environment. So if something like of this scale could have happened purely on the basis of online voices coming together and art being created and creative communication happening on the internet, then you can imagine that in future it can take much larger shapes.
And just the last question would be that your comics usually don't have indigenous, you know, tribal
Yeah.
representation, and this is
Oh,
not.
that's not true. There's a lot of stuff in my books and also in my projects with forest departments that
Okay.
depict relationships between tribal communities that live in and around forests and their interactions with the biosphere. So
So like how, like, do you think their, I mean, their representation as, you know, environmentalists,
yeah,
like how important their representation as environmentalist is for
right.
these movements, for our these all these environmental movements?
So, Srihari, in fact, a lot of the cartoons I did for COP26 actually deal with this issue and the underrepresentation of indigenous voices in on a global platform.
Right.
So they are all on my website, greenhumor.com. So if you go through
Ah,
them,
sure, sure,
you
sure,
might know what I'm speaking
sure,
about.
sure, sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks.
If anyone have any last question, they can ask. Till then, I would like to take the opportunity to ask something.
Yes,
Like for getting motivation of writing comic or something, and do you often go for a tour or travel somewhere, or like you go for a walk if you don't get any ideas, or how do you get out of the thing if you get stuck in something like?
so I go bird watching almost every day, every morning,
Oh,
and that keeps me
yes.
going. Otherwise, a lot of travel happens over assignments I do for organizations and especially forest departments. The maps I create, they're an ongoing series. I've created maps for tiger reserves, national parks, cities, countries, and these have taken me to a lot of places that are very rich in wildlife and have given me a chance to explore not just the wildlife but also the issues around conserving that wildlife that are prevalent in India, and also a few of these instances have happened abroad. So a lot of my travel happens over these assignments, and also the kind of travel that does happen gives me not just information to do that particular project but also a larger sense of what is happening with the status of conservation in the country. So yeah, I think I've been lucky to travel to a lot of different states and a few different countries as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I think we don't have any more questions. I
Yeah,
would just
just
take
one more
two.
We
question.
Okay,
have,
okay. Yeah,
we
you
have,
can.
You
we
can
have.
just unmute yourself and ask me directly if that's.
Yeah, should I? Yeah, okay. So,
Yeah, hi
hi
Shivam, I
everyone.
can hear. Hi.
Yeah, so it was a great talk. I just wanted to ask you, what, like, have you like produced comic in different languages as well, or what
Yes,
are your opinions on
Shivam.
it?
In fact, my third book, Making Friends with Snakes, which was for children, it was done in conjunction with Romulus Whitaker, who's a snake expert, a very renowned snake expert. And the book was targeted at children living around fields so that they could be aware of what kind of snakes exist around them and how to how to avert a snake bite. And that book has been, it's a comic book, it has been published in 9 regional languages. Similarly, I'm running translations of Green Humour every month with a magazine called Chakmak that comes out of Bhopal and is published in Hindi. uh, I hope that I can take up similar such efforts to translate more of my work into regional languages. A lot of the infographics and posters I create for forest departments are all produced in regional translations as well.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So I will take 2 or 3 minutes to
Yes,
present
please. Yes.
entries which you
Yeah.
received. Am I audible and my screen is visible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So these are the few entries we received for the event Arts Meet Nature. These are the poster for that. Actually, these posters are also influenced by your books also. By reading your books and looking Instagram page, I tried to make something similar. This is the entry which received from Astha, Life Inside the
Beautifully done.
Ocean. And the material they were asked to use was like which don't go waste and related to nature and all. This was
Wow.
butterfly, beautiful butterfly. This is lives of Arctic, the bird using dead leaves. This is one of my favorite, the tiny terrarium ecosystem within a jar. And this one, the giant panda strike backs.
Homeopathic medicine reviews. Very interesting.
Yes, that's all I wanted to present. Yeah,
Great. Congratulations to everybody who participated and used so many different kinds of media to create the artwork on display.
yes.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Bevab.
Yeah, first of all, I feel greatly privileged to have you here.
Please
So
cut out the
it's been an honor
formality
for
today.
all of us.
And please call me Rohan. There's really no need to call me sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Oh, I mean, Rohan. Being an organizer of the competition, first thing I would like to mention that I would like to give a commendable, it has been a commendable work by all the artists because all of this has been done without any brush or
Right.
watercolor or paint and absolutely using natural resources like leaves, twigs, or whatever, like vegetables and everything. And one more thing that there were many more entries, but due to time shortage, we couldn't add it in the presentation. So if anybody of here feels that your entry is not there, it's there with the judges, but we couldn't add it in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Uh, I think we have come to the end of this beautiful session and evening. Uh, Thank you, sir. Like, thank you, Rohan, sir, for coming and joining us today. We really hope, like, someday you could personally come in our college and give a talk and you could personally meet.
Absolutely. It would be a real delight. And thanks for having me here, Gaurav.
Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
everybody who stayed for almost an hour listening to all that I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Bye, everyone who joined today.